Hi, I'm Kris Abel. GQ has this cool series on YouTube in which they ask actors to sit down and break down their iconic roles and characters. It looks like a lot of fun, so I want to do my own version. iPod review.
Also coming up on the program, portable CD and tape players may have seen their last days because MP3s are here to stay. The new generation of musical gadgets are taking over the market. We're going to check out some of the best buys with our resident tech expert, Kris Abel.
When I joined Canada-Am, I knew it was a big deal, not just because I was going to be the first tech expert at CTV, but because our society was about to undergo a massive transformation with technology.
I was going to say that sometimes when I look at these things, I've held off, but I'm beginning to think that resistance is futile.
Oh, definitely. I mean, once you buy one of these, it's going to just completely change your lifestyle. And I really mean to emphasize that because it makes such a huge difference in terms of carrying your music collection around.
I knew that the first big story that was going to speak to this was going to be the iPod launch. And I had two problems with this. The first was that CTV wasn't really convinced. I told them it was a revolutionary device. You could carry your entire music collection in your pocket. This was going to change lives.
You are looking at basically what I consider the future of digital music.
But from their perspective, they said, look, 90% of our audience at the time didn't even own a computer. And of those who did have access to one, usually through work, they used PC computers. Apple, they saw, was a niche interest, used mainly by musicians and artists. How was this going to be relevant to our audience? The second challenge was Apple. Apple wasn't used to being in the news. So when I came to them and said, look, before the launch, I need you to give me an iPod so that I can test it. I can try it out so I can understand how I'm going to explain this on Canada-Am. They said, well, this isn't something we do. It's not something that we're used to. So I had to have a back and forth with them.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the one.
This is the one that everybody talks about. Absolutely crazy.
The Apple iPod.
I get to hold that one. That's my baby.
The iPod review went great, and as a result of it, Apple invited me as the first Canadian journalist to attend their special events, where I got to watch Steve Jobs on stage introduce the next versions of their devices that did all the things that I predicted. At CTV, however, when I came to them and said, look, finally, iTunes is available for PC. We need to do this as a story. CTV sat me down and explained, look, you're new to the world of news. This is how it works. When we do a story, we're done with it. We then move on. We do other things. You've already talked about Apple. You're not going to need to talk about Apple ever again. 2003 Blackout. In 2003, there was a massive blackout affecting the northeast part of Canada and the US. We didn't know it at the time, but this was going to be the second largest blackout in world history. I thought, well, I've got the day off. There's not much I can do with technology. And then suddenly my phone rang, and it was CTV National News. They wanted to know if they could put me on the air with Lloyd Robertson to discuss the potential of this being something caused by hackers. I said yes immediately, and then had to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? Because it's a blackout. I don't have access to the internet. I don't have access to some of my computers. They're not working. Thankfully, I am a big fan of books, and so I did have lots of books about hackers and some of the exploits in the past of what teenagers have done with bell companies and phone companies and stuff like that. As I was putting together the notes, though, CTV National News got back to me and said, look, more information is starting to come out what's going on. We still don't know what's causing it, but we can rule out teenage hackers. And so we thank you very much, but we're not chasing that lead. And I went, no problem. I guess I get to have my nap. But I began to realize that this is going to be the nature of my work in the news. We do stories as they happen. We do stories and reports that are live. And so there's always going to be the expectation that when they call me and say, can you do this? That I say yes first and then figure out how afterward.
There does not seem to be any link to terrorism. Again, the midst of a power blackout extending across much of the eastern seaboard. We'll be back in a few moments.
Honda ASIMO. As a little boy, I loved robots, but I understood R2-D2, C-3PO, they were fiction. They weren't real. And I grew up thinking that this is something that's never actually going to happen in my lifetime. How amazing it was that I got a call from Honda wanting to bring me together with ASIMO, their advanced humanoid robot, for a story for Canada-Am. And when I got there and hung out with the Honda team, they really became enamored by my enthusiasm, how much I knew about ASIMO. I got to not only just do this fantastic little tour of all the capabilities of ASIMO.
He's got this incredible backpack on the back that's not for school. It contains some of the most powerful computers, processors, and chipsets. And these give him all the special powers that help him help people. You'll see his very cute little face has 2 eyes, much like you and I. But these are special eyes.
They allowed ASIMO and myself to actually do a dance together, to do the Hawaiian hula. I mean, it was a childhood dream come true. But what's interesting is that years later, with App Central, I had the chance to bring ASIMO back on TV again. And this time, Honda came in, it was a different Honda team, and they said, this is what's going to happen. ASIMO's going to do his little routine, you can record that, and then you can sit down and interview us, and that's that.
When Honda decided to develop a humanoid robot, they were very much inspired by the way humans walk and run. Like the first 5 years of the project, that's all they did was deconstruct how human beings walk.
I said, well, hold on, look, I've got a history with me and ASIMO. I mean, this is what I did before. And they said, no, that never happened. Huh? So they explained, ASIMO is a multi-million-dollar piece of technology. Honda would never, ever allow a non-Honda employee to stand that close to him, waving your arms around, doing dance moves like that.
If it's knocked over, it can get up.
Not yet. They're still working on that.
It's just not worth taking that risk. So no, this is something they never, ever would do. They certainly don't want to encourage anybody else to think that it's something they might be able to do. So no, it did not happen. Okay, I understand, but you know, like, it's not just in my head. I've got footage.
We'll be right back. You can calm down.
Don't go away.
The coolest things that run on batteries. The coolest things that run on batteries was a week-long contest where every day on Canada-Am I brought on 5 truly amazing, outstanding gadgets that used Energizer batteries. I spent a lot of time scouring, trying to go for the craziest stuff. I had spy cameras, helium-powered remote control airships, we had interactive t-shirts. I even had some of the first lightsabers from Master Replicas that were motion activated, had all the sound effects. Seamus and I could do that signature battle from Star Wars. It was amazing. The cool part was that you could actually enter your name, and at the end of the week, one person was going to win all 25 outstanding gadgets plus all the batteries from Energizer to power them all. Our audience wrote in to say, look, you're making us late for work. Every morning I'm supposed to be out the door getting to my job, and instead I'm sticking around to see what the next cool thing from Kris Abel is.
Only on Canada-Am.
It was an outstanding success. And sadly, we never really did it again. In the United States, if they've got a good idea, they'll milk it like crazy. But here in Canada, we tend to be kind of satisfied with it. There, we did it. It was awesome. Now we're just going to move on. Okay. Canadian Alpine ski team wind tunnel. The Canadian Alpine ski team was flying down to Detroit to use the largest wind tunnel in North America to test out all their new equipment. Did I want to come along? Yes, I did. When I arrived in Detroit, I was pleased to see that also joining us was Daily Planet from Discovery Channel. Their interest was that the Alpine team was going to test out a new experimental suit that had material surface properties that was supposed to give them a substantial boost in speed. The problem was that by the time we arrived, the Olympic Committee had decided that that suit was now deemed to be illegal for competition. And so the coach of the Alpine ski team told us they just simply weren't going to test it. Daily Planet said, whoa, this is our story though. I mean, okay, you can't use the suit for competition, but aren't you at least interested in testing it out while we're here, while we've got the wind tunnel? Aren't you interested at least to know what the science is, what the data results are? And the coach said, yeah, but this is such a major problem that he didn't want his athletes to be anywhere near that suit. Didn't even want them to be photographed in it. So Daily Planet said, well, okay, is there somebody else who could put on the suit and at least try it for us? And the coach said, hey, nobody on my team. But tell you what, how about amongst you guys? Is there somebody here who would put on the suit? Without anybody saying anything to anybody, all eyes turned on me. Yeah, sure, I'll put on the suit. I mean, once again with these kinds of crazy things, my brain was divided in two. One half was going, woohoo, wind tunnel, yes, I'm definitely on board. And then the other half realized, well, there's practical things here. I need to get my story as well. You know, it's going to be hard if I'm actually in the suit in the wind tunnel. But okay, we'll figure that out. So I had to put on the suit, which was very tight, very revealing, embarrassing revealing. And then I was brought into the tunnel, this massive industrial tunnel, where they then clamped my feet and the skis to the floor. And then everybody left. Large alarms going off, this massive 3.5 foot thick door slowly closing in to seal me inside. It felt like I was in a nuclear silo. They fired up the turbine. All I could see, I'm staring into this tunnel, was just black, just pitch darkness. And then slowly, the strangest, most unusual sound came out. When it was over, all the lights stopped flashing, the door slowly opened up, Daily Planet came in with their cameras and immediately like, Kris, how was it? What was it like? And I had to describe the unusual sound that I heard. For me, it was this weird kind of, it sounded like wasps, as if hundreds of thousands of wasps suddenly emerged from their hive and started to swirl towards me. Everybody looked at me like I was kind of crazy, but I mean, I'm trying to accurately describe what it's like to be in the wind tunnel. Yeah, it's neat to have the wind hitting you, but there's also, you know, it's an strange experience. And that's when it was revealed that in the control room, somebody got a little frightened, a little afraid, and said, you know what, reduce the turbine down to like 50% or maybe 40%. And so I didn't get the wind at full speed, which means we didn't get to test the suit. At me, it was fantastic. Being in that tunnel, being able to say that I skied in a wind tunnel with the Canadian Olympic Alpine ski team is something that to this day I'm still unpacking in my head. I'm still convincing myself that it actually happened. But I greatly appreciate just what an utterly fantastic thing it was. Virginia Tech mass shooting. In 2007, I was working at my desk when I got a call from Austin Delaney. They had reports of shots being fired at the Virginia Tech campus in the United States. This was a developing story. There wasn't a lot of information. What he wanted to know was, because it was Virginia Tech, is there anything I could do to contribute? Could he and his camera person head out, and it would take them about 15 minutes to get to my place? In that amount of time, would I be able to put together something that he could use to try to cover the story until they had better information? I said yes, hung up, and then thought, what am I going to do? Thankfully, the students of Virginia Tech were very resourceful, very clever. I found out that they were tapping into the campus cameras to be able to see what was happening and using online resources like Wikipedia, where they could have a real-time entry where they could update with information and details and facts of what was going on, plus using real-time social media to communicate between each other. It was really touching not only to realize how resourceful people were, but the fact that how considerate they were towards each other. When Austin arrived, he was relieved to find that I did have something plus the visuals to go with it. He got to do his story. He did a fantastic job. I gained an appreciation watching him, realizing just how heavy the responsibility is in doing stories like this. I understood, yes, that what I put together in that quick amount of time had to be factually accurate and true. I didn't want to mislead anybody. I wanted to be very careful. It's not just to be responsible about the news, but all the people that were involved. 32 people lost their lives that day. 17 others were wounded. We didn't know it, but this was going to go on to become, to this day, the largest mass school shooting in U.S. history. I gained a better appreciation working with Austin about the responsibilities that are all involved in terms of emotionally. You're reporting a story. You have to be able to speak to the fact that this is something that's going to take a heavy toll on people. It's going to sit with us. It's not just about the toll that it takes in terms of human lives, but it's an indicator of something being horribly wrong with our society, as this becomes an issue that we grapple with again and again. Cloned cats. Next Fest was an event held in Chicago by Wired Magazine, where they brought together research teams and tech companies who were at the very forefront of innovation to show off their latest discoveries. For Can-Am, I got to do amazing things. I got to try on a raincoat that made me look invisible. I used the power of my mind to move a ball. A very small, petite woman wearing an exoskeleton suit picked me up and carried me about. I played virtual reality Pac-Man, and I met the Android version of Philip K. Dick just before he disappeared, quite tragically. I at least got to talk to him. But I understood that the big story of the day for our audience was going to be the cloned cats. Finally, there was a different animal other than a sheep that was being cloned, and those cats were there. I definitely wanted them on camera. My producer, though, was unsold. I was kind of confused, like, what's going on here? Well, I don't think it's real. Wait a moment. Everything else we've done you think is real, but the cats you don't think is real. He said, no, I think it's kind of a scam. I said, I'm telling you, it's not a scam. This is, Next Fest. Everything here has been vetted. He said, no, you're not an expert. I said, I am literally the expert. That's why we're here in Chicago. That's why Can-Am has sent me down. This is what I do. I am telling you, this all checks out. If there was a problem with these cats, all the other researchers and other tech companies there would have big, huge red flags and would not be happy about it. This is the real deal. And he just, I don't know, he had a problem with it, but he finally allowed me to at least shoot the story. I got to go over there. We got to meet the cats. We got the whole story about how people could pay good money to have their pet cat cloned so that at least they could live on with a legacy of having left behind the equivalent of a brother or a sister. The argument as to whether or not we were going to show this on Can-Am continued all the way back to Toronto. My producer just didn't want to do it. And I began to realize that what was missing for him was the comfort of being able to look to another news agency and see that they at least had done the story. If CNN had done the story, if NBC had done the story, he'd feel comfortable about it. But I understood that this meant that this was a scoop for us. We're beating everybody. Even more important that we do the story. He begrudgingly allowed, I think it was like 30 seconds into our report. And sure enough, we get a wave of pushback from the audience. Everybody excited. Whoa, clone cats! Clone cats! But wait a moment, it was like gone and there and gone. More information. Tell us more and more and more. A lot of people wanted to know more about it. And of course, it did turn out I was right. It was real. It was a scoop. I didn't get to do the full report I wanted to, but at least I did get that fantastic shot. It was a scoop. We were the first ones in Canada to show off clone cats. And I'm standing there, and I've got the original cat, I've got the clone cat, and I got to introduce their names. Meet Tahini and Baba Ganoush. Wolverine's claws. I spent 3 years campaigning to CTV to launch a blog. And so I got to launch their very first blog called Tech Life. I mean, what was going on was that every time I did a segment at Can-Am, I get waves of complaints from viewers saying, hey, we watch you, it's very cool, but the information kind of goes by very quickly. We go to the Can-Am website looking for the information and there's nothing there. And I got that. I understood. That website is not under my control. So by getting CTV to launch a blog, Tech Life, it gave me a spot where after my segments, you could go there and you can find information for all the things that I talked about. But it also meant that anytime that Can-Am was hesitant about a cool opportunity or a story, I could still say yes. Because even if they don't do the story, I can put it on my blog. Such was the case when Fox came to me and said, we'd like to have you come and meet James Gawley, the Canadian prop maker who designed the practical claw effects for Wolverine in the X-Men movies. It was a fantastic thing. You got to come, meet him, try on the claws, put on a jacket, dress like Wolverine. There was an entire day where there were various people from various shows in the media that would come and do this. The awesome part was James Gawley took a shine to me. He liked my interests. He liked the fact that I could speak the same language when it came to engineering, but also human anatomy. We did a deep dive in taking a look at the development of these claws. He needed to make something that actually looked accurate in terms of something that came out between the knuckles, but also needed to look dangerous, while at the same time not be dangerous. So that the reality is that you're doing all these stunts and you accidentally hit somebody, it's not going to cause any harm. There was a lot of considerations involved, and James did a great job of taking me through them all. Plus the development of prosthetic arm, because he had to figure out the human anatomy of where these blades would exist within the bones of the human skeleton, and then how they could slide out in between the knuckles. It was a fantastic day. I had a wonderful time spending it with James. And of course, I got to try on the claws. In time, the people of Canada began to realize how important this was. That yes, Wolverine may be a silly superhero, but nonetheless, it is an avenue for us as Canadians to realize this character that is globally loved and appreciated is a great way for us to be able to be proud about ourselves. Something that Ryan Reynolds has done a great job of showing the rest of the country, hey, this is how it's done. PlayStation at the SkyDome. One of the wild things I did that to this day still gets a big response is playing video games off of the Jumbotron at the SkyDome. Now I know it's got another official name, but I was born and raised in Toronto, and so for me, it's always going to be called the SkyDome. You see, tech companies are often looking for a big open space in which they can test their technology, do experiments with, and sports arenas are actually a good space for that, and sports teams are often happy to help. So PlayStation wanted to know what their games would look like up on the big screen and what the potential might be as a solution for doing special events. They invited me and some other journalists to come out and give it a try. Now, it's amazing to be at the home of the Blue Jays, to have a baseball glove in my hand and to be standing on the pitcher's mound, or a baseball bat on my shoulder and to be at home plate. But sitting in a nice, big, comfy chair, a controller in my hands, and Gran Turismo up on the big screen. I mean, yes, it gets a little pixelated when you put it on a big screen like that, but it's just amazing. I loved it. I love especially the reaction, the response I see from people who see the photographs. And I hope that maybe in some small way, some people get a chance to experience what I did. I hope it contributed towards that. The Nutcracker Cannon Dolls. Can-Am's fitness expert Libby Norris was asked by the National Ballet of Canada if she would join that year's run of the Nutcracker, in which she would take on the role of the Cannon Doll. Every year, the Nutcracker has 2 roles that are reserved for guests, for media guests to come in and play. These goofy little characters who escort the cannon that comes out into the central stage and fires out into the audience. Of course, there are 2 Cannon Dolls, and so Libby Norris called me and said, would you like to be the second one? And I said, oh, why, thank you, Libby. Of course I would. It's a fantastic experience. Not just because you get to see behind the scenes. I mean, I often assumed that with theatrical productions, the props, the sets, they look amazing from a distance, but up close, not so much. No, everything was fantastically detailed, beautiful, immaculate. It was a wonderful experience to be part of that. I really encourage everybody, go see the Nutcracker. But for us, as a role, I mean, we are journalists, we report on TV, we're not necessarily actors. So I wasn't sure what the expectation was. You know, we arrived at the theater on the night, and they took us through what was going to be expected. Very, very, very minimal details. Here's your costumes. Here's your makeup. When you go off to the side, you're going to follow this actor who's going to be your guide to go out on stage. Basically what we want, it's up to you, but one of the dolls is timid, the other one's aggressive. There you go. And between Libby and I, that's what made it such a fantastic experience, was that Libby and I worked so well together. I could tell when she had an idea, and I supported it. She could tell when I had an idea, and I supported it. Both of us were miming, doing our best, and I think Libby was fantastic in terms of her fainting spells. It was a wonderful occasion. I had a wonderful time. Amazingly, despite the fact that they have lots of people who take on these roles, I seem to be the first person that asked if I could record it. And the National Ballet said, okay, as long as it's just your moment on stage and only that, then yes, you can record it and you can use it. I thought, again, that this is footage I could pass on to Can-Am and they might be able to give it a mention on the show. Sadly, they didn't. But I did post it online. And what ended up happening was that as future people were tapped to play these roles. And again, I tell you, they don't give you a lot of information about it. People, of course, would Google it. And everybody ended up finding the video of Libby and I. So our performance ended up becoming the default performance. Hey, what's expected of me? What are the Cannon Dolls like? Everybody would watch our video and then base their performance off of that. That blew my mind. that was amazing that that was happening. I mean, today, of course, years have passed and a lot of people have had the chance to be able to take on the roles. A lot more recordings are out there, so it's not as much of a default as it used to be, but just astonishing that we had the chance to play it, but we also had the chance to be able to be influential in the development of those two roles. Thank you, Libby. Charity rock band. I am proud of the fact that I was the first person in Canada to review Guitar Hero when it came out. There was a lot of hesitancy about that. Really? Plastic guitar, colored buttons, you're going to go on TV with that? But I really felt it. I thought, no, this is huge. This is big. What came out of that was that I was contacted and invited to help form a CTV charity rock band in support of Sunnybrook Health Foundation. The idea was that they were going to have this reality TV-like contest at the Eden Center. We would play, we'd be judged. It wasn't about anybody winning anything. It was about drawing attention to the charity. And what I loved was that when I put out the call at CTV, immediately I got Bill Hutchinson to play lead guitar, Michelle Dubé to play bass, and Richard Krause, who actually knows how to play drums in real life, signed on to be our drummer, which was fantastic. I mean, I didn't pick these roles. They picked them for themselves. So then the realization sunk in that it meant I had to be the lead singer. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. We went through it all. We decided on Billy Idol's White Wedding. Michelle Dubé wore a veil.
Hey, little sister, what's your vibe so wet? Hey, little sister, shotgun, oh yeah. Hey, little sister, who's your Superman? Hey, little sister, shotgun, it's a nice day to start again.
It suddenly hit me when we were on stage. I mean, Erica M. was one of the judges. Erica M. from Much Music. That was just crazy. But then to realize that she's not just going to critique our ability to play with plastic controllers and buttons. In my case, she was actually going to speak about my voice. She was going to critique my ability to sing. She said nice things. I'm very thankful for that.
It's a nice day to start again.
That's the thing about being a lead singer in a rock band video game, is you're actually really singing into a microphone. And so this was something I felt a little vulnerable about. Afterwards, Michelle Dubé, in particular, really encouraged me. She said, actually, you've got chops. I've got people who tell me, you're actually a really good singer. And so a lot of people in the band were all encouraging me that if this was something I was serious to pursue, it's something perhaps I should. And although at the time, I didn't actually know anybody who was forming a band, I didn't know any producers, didn't know any record creators that I could do a recording or something like that, well, you know, the door is still open. I can still make that happen. The Death of BlackBerry. In the early days, covering research in motion was kind of tricky. The assignment desk editor at Canada-M, he explained to me, he said, look, here's my problem. BlackBerry you want to talk about this week looks to me very similar to the BlackBerry you wanted to talk about 3 months ago, and the BlackBerry 3 months before that. Our problem with television is that all the BlackBerries look the same. It's not great TV. It hadn't yet really kicked in yet a sense of pride about research in motion, about the presence that BlackBerry had on the global stage. That was something that took years later. And sadly, by the time that really took hold, where suddenly reporters, editors, everybody started to become very proud, yes, let's always do a BlackBerry story, that's when the cracks started to appear. Now for me, I thought what was happening was very obvious. And so when I appeared on BNN News and I did my review of BlackBerry's first tablet, the Playbook, and I gave it a negative review, I didn't expect what the outcome was going to be. Then when BNN said to me, okay, you didn't like the new latest device, what do you think is going to be the future for research in motion? And I said it very plainly, they're done. I don't see really much of a future for them. And as I explained, I felt that in mobile technology, every time that there's a new innovation, that's the opportunity for tech companies to be able to grab leverage and to be able to move forward and survive. If you fail those too many times, then you're just going to lose the race, as it were. And Research in Motion had done that too often. They had a great, fantastic success early with the BlackBerry, but they were failing to take advantage of the social role that BlackBerry had, the cultural role that it had. They weren't really getting on board when it came to things like apps or getting to things like music. That was something that was holding them back. And I could see there was strikes against the company, and that the idea of being able to have an innovative tablet was finally, I felt, their last straw, the last opportunity for them to come in and do something really revolutionary. And I'm sorry, but their first tablet just wasn't that. I didn't realize that that was going to hit as hard as it did. Yes, I anticipated that I was going to get a lot of hate because people tend to shoot the messenger as if, my saying it somehow would make it true. But behind the scenes, I really did feel that this was not a unique opinion of mine, that everybody else in the tech industry kind of felt the same. The difference was I was willing to say it out loud. And so in the following weeks, months, it suddenly became very apparent that yes, this was the end of Research in Motion. And to get that call saying that Lisa LaFlamme and her team wanted me to join her at the desk. What they're doing is they're admitting that they're not selling consumer products anymore. And so in the long term, they're just not going to offer a new phone. If you are using a BlackBerry for personal uses, then yes, eventually you're going to have to use something else.
This was always such a source of pride for Waterloo, for Canada, but you predicted this collapse years ago. Why didn't they?
It's a very good question, and I think that they were focusing on the physical keyboard and their network services as being the leading advantages to take them into the future. They did not anticipate that people would give up those traits to go for a phone with a larger screen, apps. By the time they realized that, I think it was too late and too many people had switched. You have to understand that this was actually a very sad event. People were very proud of BlackBerry. BlackBerry meant a lot to Canadians. I did not want to go on TV and talk about this being the end. I knew that was going to be an unhappy event. But, it's important to give context, to help honor Research in Motion, but also to explain exactly why this has happened. It was great to be at the desk with Lisa. I wish, that I could have done it under better circumstances, in a way that we can kind of help celebrate Canada in terms of our tech, in terms of our gadgets. I hope one day I'll be able to get to do that soon.
Wow, dramatic day. Kris Abel, thank you. Always great to have your insight tonight.
I will confess that it was kind of, cathartic. It was nice to finally have someone sort of acknowledge the fact that I made a prediction and it came true. To have her on national TV turn to me and kind of say, "But you predicted this." That kind of healed a few wounds. Hacking AGO paintings. I met Lloyd Kaufman, the film director at Trauma Studios, and he had great advice in terms of how you approach getting permission to go and shoot some ridiculous nonsense in somebody's house, something that could be potentially offensive, ridiculous, gross, violent. How do you do that? How do you get people to say yes to it and everything turn out fine? And he said, you need to be, first of all, very upfront, very honest. Tell them exactly what you're going to do, everything that's involved, and own up to it. Yes, you're going to do things that are going to be potentially offensive, or you're going to be doing things that potentially seem in bad taste. And as long as people understand it and they agree to it, then, everything will turn out okay. I took that in terms of the crazy things that I was doing, and that's often sort of given me the approach to take when I reach out to various companies and organizations for the kinds of experiments I want to do. That's exactly what happened when I contacted the Art Gallery of Ontario and said, I want to hack the paintings on your walls. This was for App Central. And, the AGO, I could tell by their response, the pause, that this wasn't a request that they had ever received before. I was going to be the first person doing this. Okay. And so I did take them by the hand and say, this is precisely what I want to do. I want to come in. I'm going to approach the paintings you choose. You tell me which paintings you're comfortable with. We're not going to touch the paintings. We're not going to actually do anything physically to the paintings, but I am going to visually capture the paintings, and then I'm going to manipulate and I'm going to do unusual things to the paintings. We're going to make them look destroyed, grotesque. Horrible things are going to happen to those paintings. As long as you're okay with that, I mean, this is something we can do. And, surprisingly, after they thought about it and went through it all, they said, okay, we're fine with this. Come on in. Everybody was watching me with great suspicion as I was setting up my equipment and pointing my cameras at the paintings involved. I mean, a lot of people were looking at me as if they expected security to come grab me and haul me away. We had a fun experience, though. I captured the imagery, I captured the paintings, and then I had a great discussion with their educator afterwards in terms of, is this art? Is what I was doing could be considered art? Could somebody one day potentially do the very technique that I did and create something, call it art, have it hanging on a gallery wall, and potentially sell it? And how wonderful that the AGO's approach and attitude was, why not? Who knows? Anything can happen in the world of art. This might be our future. It was great that after that aired, as often happens with these things when I'm doing it well in advance, is that the world caught up and you started to hear stories of people who are taking screenshots of images from Instagram and then turning that into something that's printed, hanging on a wall, and selling. Then you have non-fungible tokens. The arrival of that, completely digital art that seems frivolous and silly, but being taken very seriously and selling for very, very big bucks. Exactly the kind of thing that I was doing on App Central was now becoming something that was a big part of the future of the digital world of art. It was wonderful to be able to do something that seemed like it was a prank or a stunt, and then suddenly have life itself give it relevancy so that now you can look back and realize, oh, that was a serious story. Yeah. Asian water monitor lizard. So of all the live reptiles on display at the Ontario Science Centre, the one that my cameraman was most excited about was the boa constrictor. He really wanted me to be placed in there for App Central to be wrapped around by its coils. And we did have that discussion with the curators there. The unnerving thing was the way that the cameraman looked at me, just with this devilish grin and glare in his eyes. I mean, he was like, oh, he really just was looking forward to having me in the coils of this big, massive snake. The problem that I had with my producer's hat on was that I didn't think that it was going to be visually very interesting, because the snake wasn't actually going to try to kill me. Even if we could encourage it to kind of get its coils around me, it was going to be up to me to really ham things up. I'm being constricted, and I thought that was going to be kind of phony. As an option B, the curator said we could put you in with the Asian water monitor lizard. This is the second largest reptile in the world after the Komodo dragon. I mean, that's an instant yes. I saw the lizard. I didn't think they would ever allow me to be in with it. But sure enough, they said, no, this is easy. We've got a simple plan. You step into one side of the enclosure. We throw food into the other side of the enclosure while the lizard is eating. You are safe enough to be off by yourself where you can then perform to camera. The cameraman, as always, would be safe on the other side of the glass. However, to my delight, nothing happened according to plan. As soon as I came in, the Asian water monitor lizard came over. She decided I was more interesting than the food. She wanted to know what kind of food I had eaten. She wanted to taste my breath. Would that give her the information of finding a more interesting meal? So that's why she came over. And because of that, she was very friendly. She wanted something from me. I knew that this was, at least as far as I could tell, very, very safe. And so I allowed it. It was nice to have her climb up onto my lap. There were two things I did not anticipate. One is that immediately word got out at the Science Center, and the next thing I knew that the glass windows of the enclosure were suddenly full from floor to ceiling with just human faces. People, just hundreds and hundreds of people all packed in, all trying to watch the crazy guy get eaten by the large lizard. I wish I had a camera so that I could show you what the experience is like to be an animal in a zoo-like enclosure, to have people watching you, that you can see this quite noticeably. This is what the animals go through. It's something that to this day I'm still unpacking in my head, what it means to be an animal in a zoo on display. I think about it a lot. The second part was that I kind of anticipated, but I didn't realize it or fully appreciate the fact that her claws were incredibly sharp. When she climbed up onto me, I could feel it in my jeans. And so it wasn't an issue of whether or not she intended to harm me. The real problem was going to be any harm she could do to me unintentionally. That in her zeal to get up, to flick her tongue into my mouth and try to get the information as to what I was eating, she might accidentally put her claws into me. That was something that was very terrifying. Now, thankfully, everything went fine. I had a fantastic time with her. I love that I can tell a story that I was French kissed by a 6-foot-long reptile. That's a wonderful thing. And afterwards, it was great footage to put out there. I realized, however, that she completely shredded my shirt. And then the second realization kicked in when later on, I watched a documentary about water monitor lizards, only to discover that their main prey are capuchin monkeys. So I now look back and appreciate that her prey, what she's normally used to eating, is actually a smaller version of me. Monkeys are very similar to us humans. Who knows if there was any kind of thought in her mind of, ooh, he's just a larger monkey. I wonder what he tastes like. Apps for cats. Apps with cats. Well, I've already unpacked this on my audiobook, Wild Curiosity. This concept of us taking an app that's designed to preoccupy household cats and trying it out with big cats, a tiger, a lion, a Eurasian lynx. But what I will add is that I'm very proud of all the steps and the precautionary considerations that I took, not just for my cameraman, myself, and for the people, but for the animals themselves. And that as the years have ticked by, I look back and have a great appreciation as to just how everything worked out, and it was really, really well. Of course, everybody loves the fact when I tell them that I had asked our cameraman if he was willing to kind of do this stunt, to go into an enclosure where there's no fence, there's no precautions, it's just us and a live tiger. And his response at the time was, Kris, it's the tiger, then you, then the camera, then me. A lot of people laugh at that. I will now add, he will also get the shot. This is something I've learned from other hosts who've done stories involving wild animals, is that your camera person, their number one priority is always to get the shot. Don't expect that they're necessarily going to warn you that something big is crawling up behind you, or that they're necessarily going to come in and save you. First, they're going to get the shot, then they'll try to save you. That's something that I think about a lot. But again, I'm very proud of the precautions that we took. I'm glad everything worked out really well. On my way out, though, what I will add was that I had the chance to encounter a second tiger at Jungle Cat World. There was an older tiger. His name was Isaac. And as I went by his enclosure, I called out his name, Isaac! And suddenly his head popped out and he came bundling down and he came running towards me. And he put his entire flank up against my front. It was amazing. I got to run my fingers down through his fur. It was just like the pan-ultimate Calvin and Hobbes experience. And I'm never, ever going to forget that. Eating fire.
Ladies and gentlemen, step right up. I have an app that can track your every move.
Taking App Central to the circus seemed like a simple concept. There was an app that claimed it could measure your activities as you perform them with sensors. So why not then use it on activities at the circus?
Out to the line, push your butt over your head, and try and look up.
All right. Seemed like a great idea, and we had a lot of fun there. But while I was there, Dangerous Dan from the Center of Gravity, that's the name of the school, came over and went, I hear you like to do crazy things. And I said, I certainly do. He said, would you like to learn how to eat fire? Yeah. Yes, I would. So he took me to the side, and I was surprised at how easy it was to kind of take me through the process once he set up all of his equipment, what was involved, and then we shot it. What I did not anticipate, or what I did not think through, was that once we got to the point where there I am, I've got my tongue on fire, a shot of flame going way up, it's amazing, was that I did not prepare myself in terms of how I was going to pose for the camera. This has to be done on camera. Okay, how do I present myself? What's the emotion? I've got my tongue on fire. What should I be feeling? I hadn't thought of any of that in advance. I just kind of, did that. It was amazing though. I did not anticipate how high the flames were going to shoot off of my tongue. We got the shot. It was wonderful. Dangerous Dan, I love you, man. That was wonderful. However, after the fact, as so often happens with these kinds of activities I do, I later on learned that there is a danger that can happen with this particular stunt. That as you are preparing the various fuels that are involved that have to be applied to your tongue, to the batons, to the paper, that if you're not careful, you can end up inhaling the fumes that are coming off of all these fluids. And so when you perform the fire eating stunt, you can accidentally have the fire catch hold of those fumes and travel down your throat and end up searing your lungs. So there was the potential for some serious things to happen. Yes, I understood that I was under the care of a professional though. I mean, this was the right people who are guiding and advising and watching over what I was doing. And so yes, everything went fine. And again, taking precautions is what made a safe day a fun day. I certainly hope that I get to do something like that again. Dangerous Dan, thank you, man. That was awesome. L'Oreal's secret Paris labs. On Global News Morning, I tested out a new high-tech lipstick from L'Oreal Canada. You could sample a color from another object and it could actually produce that color of lipstick.
I normally don't wear lipstick, but I do test all my technology.
Oh, wow.
There you go. And so actually, it does match pretty good.
I gave it the color from a set of lips of an illustration of Marilyn Monroe, just so that I could say, I have the lips of Marilyn Monroe. And that tickled L'Oreal Canada so much that they invited me to join a special trip that they had arranged for a bunch of cosmetic journalists to go to Paris and visit their secret labs. I was the only guy. To go to Paris, to hang out with a bunch of fashion models, that's fantastic. But they also asked me if they could apply some of their experimental technology. They put an EEG headset on my head so they could monitor the way that my brain responds to different perfumes. That was really cool. And then they wanted to do an in-depth analysis of my skin, which I allowed them to scan and to do, both my face and my arms.
Intimate images of your skin on your face. They can pinch and zoom and look at every wrinkle, every crevice, every crack. In fact, because it's scanning at different spectrums, they're looking at what's happening beneath your skin and can point out where dark circles are starting to appear under your eyes, where you're developing brown spots and things of that nature. Your response is what I heard in the room. I was the only man in the room, and every woman who saw these images was like, oh!
Horrified, yeah.
Yes, clearly this is going to be a private experience in the store. And being the only man, I stepped up and said, okay, I'll sit down. You can scan my face.
For you.
But the weird thing was to hear them audibly gasp when they saw the results, because it turned out I have an unusual skin condition. Yes, I am white, I'm Caucasian, but whereas most people, when you analyze their skin, you go in depth into it, you'll find that most people have an undertone that's either orange or yellow, pink or red. In my case, it's blue. That's what they told me. And I thought, okay, that's crazy. This was my 50th birthday. What a way to celebrate your 50th birthday. I mean, hanging out with fashion models, but also having a very intimate analysis of the condition of your skin. But I liked kind of the idea that there was a goth boy aspect to myself. Astonishing to be able to have that kind of realization about something that I had taken granted for my entire life. That was amazing, that experience. Now, I don't have a problem with being different. I don't mind being different. I hope that everything about my career kind of speaks to that, because when you are comfortable with being different, that allows you to go off and have adventures. You're comfortable with going into and encountering the unknown. That's exactly what I think everybody should do, and I hope that my career encourages you to do the same.